Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories.
It had been a hectic week, and we put many miles on our sedan during that time. About 20 minutes after returning home, I was sitting on the porch in my old chair with a glass of craft beer, thinking about how our twins were spending their first days away from home. Emily and I had just completed a trip that left our home feeling like an empty nest, the same trip that countless other parents have made or will make in the days ahead with their own kids. I could guarantee that none of those other parents felt as relieved as I did at that moment. Since Brian attended the University of Nevada, Reno was our first stop. We were also able to leave our rented car there, which meant we no longer had to alternate driving. Our daughter, Megan, flew to Miami to be a Panther the next day, while we and her parents headed a few miles further south to Key West to enjoy a few days of sunbathing and beach time. The next 3 days were filled with more intimacy than we had ever experienced in our entire marriage. Emily was simply insatiable. Having children early when we were both just over 20 meant that we were now only 40 and still full of energy. On the way home, we made a short stop at a deserted roadside rest area where Emily did her best to prove to me that she had forgotten her underwear on purpose. Now, while I was lounging in a chair indulging in pleasant memories, Emily went upstairs to take a shower and get cleaned up. I was a little surprised when I heard the hairdryer turn on, which usually only happens when she is getting ready for work or preparing to go out somewhere. A few minutes after the whine of the hairdryer stopped, I heard Emily's steps and the clicking of her heels in the kitchen, another unusual sound since she usually walked around the house in rubber-soled slippers or simply barefoot. Before I could continue my lazy reflections on these unusual occurrences, she called out to me, "Nick, honey, could you come and sit with me for a minute? I need to talk to you about something. It won't take long." Emerging from my thoughts and from my chair, carrying my empty glass, I responded cheerfully, "I'm on my way, darling." Walking into the kitchen, I was amazed to see my wife sitting at the table, dressed in a fresh blouse and clean jeans, looking as great as ever. She poured me a freshly brewed mug of coffee and placed it in front of where she was sitting. Emily seemed focused and a little tense, and I was puzzled, not understanding what her smart look meant, so I slowly sat down in the chair that she obviously wanted me to sit on. "What's going on, Emily?" I asked warmly, taking possession of the cup and taking a sip of the strong hot drink. "I'm leaving you, Nick," she announced simply and calmly, picking up a large envelope made of thick paper. "I have divorce papers here for you to review and sign." She continued speaking, but I was numb with shock. My head buzzed, and I couldn't utter a word. A deafening blow from nowhere. I had never boxed, but in those seconds I felt like a boxer after taking a powerful uppercut and getting knocked down. Pushing the envelope with the documents onto my side of the table, Emily continued to hammer out monotone phrases, oblivious to the paralysis that had struck me. "All the terms of the divorce are in these papers. I don't expect anything from you. You can do whatever you want with all my things left in the house. All our savings have been divided, and bills paid as of today. I've canceled all joint credit cards and notified everyone who needed to know about my change of address. You can find out all other details from your lawyer. If you need anything from me, contact me only through my lawyer." Taking a breath, Emily continued in the same dispassionate, businesslike voice, "I also obtained a restraining order because I don't want to have any more contact with you after I leave. You'll also find it in this envelope. In addition, I changed my phone number and email address, and all my previous accounts are now closed." She didn't expect me to respond, and I couldn't utter a word. I just sat there like an idol and stared blankly at her. The almost untouched cup of coffee in front of me exuded light, disappearing steam, and was slowly cooling. "Please," she tapped her well-groomed, varnished nail on the tabletop in warning, "don't try to create any problems with the children by trying to extract any information from them. They are aware of what's happening and will not help you. The same applies to my parents." After looking at me indifferently or examining her sleek hands, Emily finally focused her gaze on me, coldly staring straight into my eyes. "I know, Nick, that you're going to ask about this, so we'll say it myself. I've been in a relationship with Greg for the past 10 years, and now I hope to turn my work husband into my real full-time husband. I loved you, Nick, but I love Greg more. He endured and waited long enough to earn the right to be with me. Well, today I'm breaking up with you, and now I will completely belong to him alone. That's all. Goodbye, Nick. Emily finished, stood up, and left the table, heading towards the exit. Only when she picked up the bag with her things that was standing at the threshold and had already opened the front door did I finally find the ability to speak, and in a strange voice, managed to croak out only one word, why. Still showing no emotion, she froze for a moment, turned her head, looked me straight in the eyes, and said only 2 words, and more. With those words, she stepped over the threshold, slamming the door behind her, and all I heard in the inky silence was the clicking of her heels, the muffled knock of the car door, and the sound of a roaring engine gradually moving away and disappearing after a minute. That was the last time I saw or spoke to Emily for the next 18 months. Greg was the man I'd considered my oldest and best friend for the past 15 years. Emily and Greg's wife, Linda, became close friends during their pregnancy esselmates, you might say, since they were both close in age. Linda was 25, and Emily was just over 20. Moreover, Cindy, the daughter of Greg and Linda, was born the day after our twins, which of course served as a clear sign of fate for both wives. This initial friendship grew into such closeness that they were inseparable, which naturally meant that we husbands were also together. The closeness of the two families soon became almost like a family unit within one large and friendly family, since we visited each other every weekend. And it was very convenient to live just 2 blocks from each other. Until our unexpected moment that brought the twins into this world. Both Emily and I were in college. Emily always wanted to study business or business management, while I majored in mathematics while earning a partial scholarship to the college baseball team. At that time, I had not yet decided which path to choose in later life. Everything changed when Emily told me she was pregnant, and I had to give up all my hopes and dreams to get a job and support our family. Our parents were great to both of us, so the wedding was booked and organized by them within 2 months. I was late, and the only child of my parents, who were already approaching 40 years of age when I was born, and they bitterly thought that they were destined to remain childless. Therefore, thankful for the great joy that finally fell upon them, they always gave me all the love and support that a long-awaited child could have. Emily had a brother, John, 8 years older than her, which meant that she didn't really have a particularly close family relationship with him. John left for college before she was 10, and other than a couple of fleeting visits, he never really returned to the family. Unfortunately, he died in a bizarre car accident just a year after graduating from college. This forced Emily's parents to devote as much attention to their only daughter as my mother and father devoted to me. As a wedding gift, my parents ceremoniously presented me with the deeds to our old family home as they themselves were moving further south, planning to retire in the next few years. I found a job selling policies at a local insurance company, quickly getting used to the business and feeling like a fish in water. The salary for a new agent was, of course, quite low, but good commissions from successful deals could almost double my income compared to my initial salary. It just meant that I had to work a lot persistently and late into the night, usually 12 hours a day, sometimes including weekends. In the months before giving birth, Emily took a part-time job as a secretary in one of the offices with the same intention of getting a degree, but now she spent most of her time studying part-time online. During this period, the support of her parents became truly invaluable. When the twins were born, they became our lifesaver in caring for the babies and used any excuse to visit them and play with their grandchildren. The unfortunate incident with Anna Moore occurred 3 years later. I was successful in my business, and my company nominated me for Salesperson of the Year for the Nevada region. Our small company, which that year also became one of the market leaders and was later purchased by a national corporation, believed in my success. In addition to the $10,000 bonus, I was given an all-expenses-paid trip for 3 nights to Denver, where we were headquartered. The trip also included a gala ceremony with dinner on the first evening, at which the best seller of the year was to be chosen, and then 2 more days that remained at our complete disposal. For Emily and me, this would be the first time we left our city together without the twins, and we were looking forward to it with joyful anticipation. But 2 days before departure, everything went wrong. First, Brian was diagnosed with a severe cough, and the next day, Megan also fell ill. Unfortunately, my presence at the ceremony was mandatory, So Emily kissed me goodbye on Friday morning with sadness in her eyes and made me promise that I would try to enjoy the next few days. Arriving about an hour before the gala started, I had time to check in and let them know that I was attending the ceremony alone. After showering, shaving, and putting on my rented tuxedo, I walked down into the great room and found my seat at the table, discovering that I was seated next to Anna Moore, who had arrived from our office in Las Vegas. While most of the people at the dinner were in their 30s or older, Anna was only a year older than May was 30 at the time, and this was her first full year with the company. Before this big event, I had only had a few beers in my life, and this place had a free open bar throughout the dinner. As far as I remember, I only drank a couple of glasses of wine. Then, when the awards began to be announced, I was absolutely shocked to hear that I was the one who was loudly proclaimed Salesperson of the Year. Stunned, I made my way onto the stage where I was presented with a trophy and a check for $25,000 to thunderous applause. When I returned to my seat, I was kindly sent a bottle of champagne from our bosses. To be honest, the rest of the night passed in a bit of a blur until I woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning lying in bed next to the naked Anna Moore. Scared to death, with a ringing in my ears and a severe hangover, I rushed to my room on unsteady legs, frantically packed my things, and was on my way home within 20 minutes. Emily, of course, was immensely surprised to see me 5 hours later when I rushed home, and as you would expect, she was not very happy 10 minutes later when I told her that I got drunk at a gala dinner and found myself the next morning in another girl's bed. Angry, she abruptly interrupted me, refusing to listen to my explanations and excuses. The only thing she asked was what the girl's name was, and before I could say anything else, she told me she was going to her parents for a couple of days. Quickly packing a small bag, she, without saying a word, grabbed the keys, ran out the door, and disappeared, leaving the children with me for 3 days. Emily did not answer my calls, apparently not even wanting to hear my voice. I went to work on Tuesday after dropping off the kids at the daycare we used, and when I returned in the evening, she was already home, carefully pretending that nothing had happened between us. When I tried to talk to her, she immediately interrupted me and harshly said that if I ever mentioned the incident again, she would immediately take the children, leave, and never return. When we went to bed that night, she acted mechanically in bed, devoid of intimacy or love, only going through the motions. After that night, it took many more months for the feeling of closeness in bed to return, but eventually, it did, and as per her request, we never spoke about the incident again. The following year, Emily graduated, received her business degree, and wanted to get a job that would use her knowledge. Our relationship with Greg and Linda blossomed to the point where we spent every weekend together, unless Greg's work or mine interfered. Even so, it didn't stop our wives from meeting and spending time together, although it became a little more difficult for us as Linda and Greg moved 15 miles away. Ironically, or simply by coincidence, Emma's parents soon moved to the same area to rent a larger apartment that would provide more space for their grandchildren. In addition, they also began looking after Cindy, giving Greg and Linda a little more freedom. Greg's company grew quickly, and one day they needed an office manager, and he himself needed a personal assistant. This position seemed to be a perfect fit for Emily, and after interviewing with managers, my wife got the job and loved it. Emily grew up with the company and was always close to Greg, hence the humorous name Greg's work wife. This situation continued for 7 years, and then Linda suddenly died from a brain aneurysm. This terrible blow happened on a day when she was visiting me, as she usually did when Greg and Emily had to go on business trips together. This tragedy was devastating for all of us, but it obviously hit Greg especially hard. He couldn't handle the shock himself, and he certainly couldn't look after his 11-year-old daughter properly on his own. So, the solution was to have Emily come over to the Jenkins house for a couple of hours after work 3 times a week to make sure everything in their house was clean and tidy and to prepare dinners that could be quickly reheated. At least that's how Emily presented the situation to me. 18 months later, I was just leaving the garage with the last box of things to load into my truck when I paused for a second as I saw Emily's car pull into the driveway of the house. It was the first time she had returned since that memorable conversation in the kitchen during which she had so coldly thrown the divorce petition at me. At this point, of course, She was the last person I expected to see today. When she got out of the car, I greeted her. "Emily, aren't you violating the restraining order by being here?" I asked in an even and neutral tone. The ban ceased to apply on the day we divorced. She waved it off, playing with her key ring. "How are you doing?" I shrugged. "Things are as they suit. I live in the present and dream of a bright future. Would you like some coffee?" I threw over my shoulder, already returning to the house. "That would be great," she replied, following me. By this time, there was nothing left in the house except a few boxes and a lonely dining table in the kitchen. All household appliances and one of the bedroom sets were left to the new owners. The sale of the rest of the furniture and other household items among neighbors and acquaintances carried out over the past couple of days was very successful. What was left over would soon be sent to the landfill. The son of one of my former work colleagues promised to do this for me the day before I handed over the keys to the new residents. His wife and her friend also volunteered to help me with the final cleaning and organizing of the rooms of the house, although I tried unsuccessfully to refuse. A lonely greeting card lay on the mantelpiece in the living room. Since I turned 42 a couple of days ago, my colleagues at the office gathered to send it to me with warm congratulations from all of them, as well as another card wishing great luck in the new place, which I had already packed with my luggage. The company I worked for over 19 years has always been very kind to me, and it was with sadness and great regret that I was leaving behind some good friends. But it had to be done. There was nothing keeping me here anymore. Having made coffee, and each taking a mug of the hot drink, we sat down in the same places where we were face to face 18 months ago. "So, why do I suddenly have the pleasure of being in your company on this beautiful day?" Having taken a sip, I asked with detached curiosity because I could not understand what prompted Emily to return here again after she abruptly and mercilessly cut off all the loose ends between us. "Don't you guess?" She snorted with visible displeasure. "The children received letters from you saying that you were moving somewhere. I don't understand why you didn't just call them and tell them about it. Why did you need to notify them by registered mail? In fact, I did just that because it was the only way to be sure that they would know I was moving. Otherwise, they would have unleashed all the dogs on me, accusing me of disappearing. Actually, I was just calling them." "Oh, wait a minute," I chuckled. "Small correction, I called Megan because I can't call Brian." "What are you talking about? Why can't you call Brian?" Emily asked, puzzled. "I don't have his number," I sighed. "Listen, the fact is that the children don't want to keep in touch with me," I explained, seeing from her ironically raised eyebrows that she didn't believe my words at all. "Well, I'm going to have to show my ex-wife how our kids really feel about me." My phone was on the table in front of me, so I unlocked it and dialed Megan's number, putting it on speaker. The caller beeped 10 long times before going to voicemail. I pressed end and looked at Emily. "Couldn't you call her? Would you be so kind?" "Megan must just be busy." She answered me as if making excuses, but still took out her mobile phone and dialed our daughter's number, also putting the phone on speaker. Her call was answered almost immediately after the second ring. "Hello, Mom. How are you?" Megan's cheerful voice rang out. "I'm fine, honey. What are you doing now?" "Well, right now we're chilling with Cindy. We're going to a party later, so at this moment, we're just lying around and saving energy," my daughter answered with a giggle and a drawn-out laziness. "Have you heard any news from your father?" Emily asked, looking at me and arching her eyebrow meaningfully. "Yes, I talked to him last night. He said he talked to you and promised he'd pick up Cindy and me today." Yeah, in about 10 minutes. I think he's going to grab Brian later too before we all go to the party," Megan chirped. I felt my insides clench painfully as I heard my daughter call Greg Dad. Emily could always read me like an open book, so she saw how much that little thoughtless comment from Megan hurt me. Clenching my fists, I simply leaned back in my chair and stared blankly at the ceiling. "You mean Greg?" Emily asked incredulously, not believing what she had just heard. "Well, yes, Mom, who else?" Megan continued to giggle. "By the way, he really likes it when I call him Dad. And in any case, you know that he will become my father in 3 weeks," she reminded her mother. In 3 weeks, my ex-wife was supposed to get married again. Believe it or not, they even sent me an invitation to their celebration. Yeah, right? As if I was really going to show up there. "Megan, I'm asking you, when was the last time you talked to your real father?" Emily asked impatiently, raising her voice slightly, in which stern notes appeared. "Oh, Mom, well, I don't remember, maybe a few weeks ago." Sensing something wrong in her mother's voice, Megan's amused tone immediately disappeared. I opened and showed her my call log from Megan's number, and Emily, glancing at the screen, could see my numerous but unsuccessful attempts to reach my daughter. To be honest, none of my children have called me since Emily left not a single call in almost a year and a half. That's funny to hear, because I'm sitting next to him right now, and I saw with my own eyes how he tried to call you just a minute before I did. What's going on, Megan? Emily asked in an even more stern voice. Oh, well, Mom, I just came. Our daughter's confused voice came from the speaker. I just want to remind you that you only have one father, and it's not Greg. We can talk seriously about this later. Young lady, the mother promised harshly, ending the conversation and irritably poking the end call button. Emily was clearly upset as she turned off the call and pushed the phone away from her. So, why don't you have Brian's number? She returned to the question again. FYI, Greg made sure the boy had a new phone and memorized his number within hours of his old phone being stolen. If only I knew, I shrugged. Listen, don't be too strict with the children. Apparently, such was their love and affection for me that after a little over a year, they found me completely unnecessary. Smiling darkly, I intertwined my fingers and squeezed them tightly. You heard your daughter. She is happy that she will now have a new father. You know that old saying, out of sight, out of mind? Well, apparently for Megan, I'm already an empty place. I pointed to my long list of calls on my phone. As you can see, I no longer have anything to do with the children, and as far as I know, in 3 weeks, I will be officially replaced by the real dad. This comment, as I saw it, really hurt her, but it was the sad truth. I think that since you left, I've talked to both of them combined for a total of no more than an hour, although I try to stay in touch. God, I really tried. Remembering one of these typical moments, I smiled bitterly. The time I was able to get tickets to the Raiders game on opening day of the season, I was so pleased and happy. But when I called Brian with the news, he said he was too busy to have fun. I sighed and looked up at Emily's frozen figure opposite me. And later, I found out that he and Greg and a couple of other guys went to that very game, buying tickets at the last minute. Well, if that's what they want to do, I can't force them to do otherwise. We were silent for a few moments, lost in our thoughts, before Emily changed the subject with a quiet cough. So, you're moving out of here to be closer to your parents? Not really. I have to leave so I can look after my mother now. She needs constant care and attention. Oh my God, did something happen to her? How does your father deal with this? You never told me anything that she had any problems, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with tears. Well, at least Emily really loved my parents. Mom has a late stage of Alzheimer's disease. This is very bad because she doesn't remember anything at all 90 of the time. As for Dad, we buried him a little over 3 weeks ago. The hospital said he had a heart attack, although personally, I think his heart was broken and Dad left because he was suffering too much from disappointment and pain. Oh no, my ex-wife burst into tears and, through her sobs, asked, "How do you know it was a broken heart, and why didn't you call us?" Of course, I called. I objected tiredly. And to tell you the truth, that was the last time I talked to Megan. Yeah, it was the day after Thanksgiving. That's when I found out that Brian had a new number, and our conversation with Megan lasted no more than a minute. Without even trying to listen to what I wanted to tell her, she hastily blurted out that she was incredibly busy and would call me back soon. It's a pity that neither that day nor a week later did my daughter ever call me back. I myself called her every day for a couple of weeks until I finally understood what the reason was. Ironically, although my kids blocked me on Facebook, they didn't block my dad. I later found out that when Megan told me she was very busy, it was because she was going to the Black Friday sale that day with you and Grandma Jenkins. I said sarcastically, using my air quotes. As for how I know that my father died of a broken heart, that's easy. I never told my parents about our divorce. Yes, I was going to do it sooner or later, but I never could, I admitted, looking away and feeling tears welling up in my eyes. Brushing them away with the back of my hand, I took a deep breath and continued. When you left, I went to them the next weekend to talk about what happened between us face to face. When I got there, I discovered how bad my mother's condition had become. Dad had told me before how forgetful she was sometimes, but since I last saw them the Christmas before last, her condition had seriously deteriorated. You obviously never knew about this because not once in the last 3 years have you been able to go with me to their place when I took the children there. I could not resist directly hinting at those compelling reasons that, as we now both knew well, prevented Emily from accompanying me and the children every time. Because of my mother's illness, I could not have the righto bring this news to both of them then, and every week it became more and more difficult to do this anyway. On Thanksgiving Day, after we had finished the holiday dinner and put Mom to rest, Dad began asking me questions persistently because he had not heard anything from you or the children for over a year. So, I had to tell him the truth about our breakup and your leaving me. Emily, tense as a string, sat opposite me, placing her sharp elbows on the table and covering her mouth with both palms, only eyes shining with tears and trembling eyelashes lived on her pale face. In the morning, I found my father in his favorite chair. I dully continued my sad story. He was sitting, leaning back, and clutching our family photograph in his hands, the same sunny one in which all 4 of us laugh and fool around. It was still wet from his tears. So yeah, Emily, our divorce broke his heart. You know, Mom and Dad were married for 52 years. He was a man of the old school, and of course, hoped that you and I would be together until our death. I could no longer hold back the tears that continued to draw wet paths down my cheeks as I once again relived that dark day. Rising sharply from the table, I turned to the window and stared at the pale blue sky with rare clouds floating across it. Emily's sniffles and quiet sobs could be heard behind me. Resting my aching forehead against the cool glass, a minute later, without turning around, I spoke quietly again. It was at the funeral that I suddenly realized how much I'm alone in this world. The only people present at my farewell to Dad were me, the chaplain, and a couple of their neighbors. Nobody else came. I couldn't even bring my mother to the funeral because she wouldn't even be able to understand what was happening. Only a week or 2 after the funeral, when my mother had recovered sufficiently, did I dare to tell her that my father was no longer with us. But I still can't stand the pain it causes her every time she hears and realizes it. So now, when Mom asks about him, I just say that he went out for a while and will be back soon. Emily was already sobbing unashamedly, but I had no more tears left to cry. Over the past weeks, I had been emotionally completely devastated. My distracted gaze wandering around the room fell on the mantelpiece and stopped at the lonely greeting card lying on it. Emily, raising her red tear-stained eyes, followed my gaze and obviously noticed what I was looking at. I continued in the same neutral, distant, and seemingly alien voice. You know, maybe I'm lonely and even my mother doesn't recognize me now, but I owe her a huge debt just for bringing me into this world. So yes, I am packing everything here so that I can be there to look after her for however long she is left in this world. Finally, I turned to my ex-wife and stood up straight, crossing my arms over my chest. A bitter grimace of sarcasm permeated my last words to the one I loved so much for many years while we were together. It's amazing, isn't it? What were the consequences of your actions, and how many people did it affect? You destroyed our marriage, you destroyed my relationship with my children, and on top of that, you destroyed my family. I finished the story, letting out the anger and poisonous accusations in my voice that I promised myself not to show, but I just couldn't do anything about it. Don't you dare blame all this on me, Emily jumped up in response. Unlike you, Greg is devoted to me. And do not forget that you cheated on me with Anna Moore. Jumping up from her seat and instantly blushing, she pointed her finger in my direction with indignation. I'm sure she didn't expect that in response to the accusation thrown right in my face, I would start laughing, and not just laughing, but really bursting into laughter to the point of tears in my eyes. Oh yes, of course, I replied, barely catching my breath. Let's not forget about Anna Moore, the reason you spent 10+ years planning your revenge perfectly. I still remember that evening when you categorically told me not to mention her name in this house, otherwise you would immediately take the children and leave me forever. Emily raised her chin arrogantly and defiantly crossed her arms over her chest, continuing to look at me defiantly. Well, Emily, now that you have, despite everything, carried out all your threats. I believe that this train has already left. But I still want you to hear this once, and for Allie never touched Anna more. Having shouted these words, I immediately felt great relief. Looking into Emily's eyes, widened with shock and flashing confusion, frozen in place. As soon as I threw off the many years of understatement, a feeling of lightness descended on me, and I continued in a slightly calmer voice. When I woke up early in the morning in her bed, I was still wearing the same tuxedo I was wearing the night before. Nothing ever happened between us. Seriously? Do you really think that I will believe this fairy tale? Emily spat back at me with poisonous sarcasm. Of course, I expect you to believe me. Why? Yes, if only because I have never lied to you before. And of course, I especially have no reason to lie to you now, when everything between us is over for a long time. I answered her more restrainedly, regaining my composure. I don't give a damn. Talk what you want. She snorted, casually dismissive and sounding more like Megan than the adult woman I was married to. For some reason, her indifferent response angered me. I could still see that she didn't believe what I was saying, but for some reason, it was important to me that she did. I grabbed my phone, put it on speaker, and called my old office, motioning for Emily to sit still and not interfere. After just a couple of rings, Jane, the receptionist, quickly answered. Hello, Jane. This is Nick Roberts. Oh, hi, Nick. Have you finished settling your affairs yet? My old friend responded cheerfully. Probably for a big move. You know, everything will be different here without you. The girl sighed with regret. Yes, everything is already packed. I just want to talk to my old friend one last time before I go on the road. Listen, I'm trying to reach a colleague in the Las Vegas office. I'm not even sure if she still works there, so I was wondering if you could look into the system and see if you can find Anna Moore. Of course, Nick. Wait a minute, Jane responded quickly, and for several seconds, only the rapid clicking of the keyboard could be heard on the speaker. After a short pause, she came back to me. Yes, she still works for us in the same branch in Las Vegas. Do you need her number? Or do you want me to connect you directly? Oh, thank you very much for your help. Just transfer my call to her line. And Jane, honey, take care of yourself. Remember, if Paul decides to make an honest woman out of you, I'll be waiting for an invitation from you. Absolutely, Nick, Jane giggled. And don't forget us either, okay? Well, now I'm connecting you. You can talk. Listening to our casual conversation, Emily frowned, but now watched me with intent eyes. Hello, Anna is on the line, said a familiar voice that I had not heard for many years. Hi, Anna. This is Nick Roberts from the Reno office. I don't even know if you remember me. My God, who am I hearing? Nick Roberts. Are you asking if I remember you? Damn, I've been dreaming about you for so many years, the very man I wanted but never got. And suddenly he calls me? Well, Anna answered laughing. How the hell are you doing? She asked, but without waiting for an answer, she chatted on. It must be some kind of telepathy, because you won't believe it, but just recently I was thinking about you. It's been how long? Yes, it must be 12 years since you and I spoke at that very gala reception where we met, remember? I then saw you several more times at other ceremonies. But alas, I never got another chance to make up for lost time. But you yourself know how intense all these crowded events, important meetings, conversations, and other fuss were. Of course, I remember how we first met then in Denver. I finally managed to wedge myself into her chatter. Actually, it was 12 years ago, although I must admit, apart from the award ceremony itself, I don't remember much from that night. I admitted to her, chuckling. Oh, Nick, you were so funny that evening. You could hear her smiling in her voice when she said these words. What do you even remember? Well, I remember how after my clumsy thank you speech, I left the stage, and then it seems we were still drinking champagne at the table. But I honestly admit, from that moment, everything in my memory became a little blurry. I can only say that this was the first and last time in my life when I got so drunk. I admitted, embarrassedly. Anna's loud, boisterous laughter came through the phone speakers. Yes, damn it. By the end of the evening, you were pretty good, although in my opinion, you didn't drink that much compared to the others. Hey, Nick, do you want frankness for frankness? She teased me with a sly voice. Well, hit me, Miss Moore, with your frankness. It's interesting, I played along with my former colleague. I must admit that I had my eye on you that evening. although I knew that I had serious competition from all those unmarried ladies who gathered there that evening. Well, yes, of course, a tall, dark-haired, attractive guy built just like you looked like a pot of honey with excited bees hovering around him. Ah! Anna laughed infectiously again. I joined her, glancing sideways at Emily, who, listening to Anna's babbling revelations, pursed her lips in hostility, twisting them into a rather sour grin. When I dragged you to dance, then quite by accident, I swear I slid my hand there below and felt how big and hard you are. If it's getting a little hot here? Yeah. And then I almost fainted because of it. True, being called Emily all evening was a little unpleasant, but at least it showed me how much you loved your wife. After Anna's words, Emily's expression changed sharply, and now she even seemed to turn a little pale. Around 11, you once again muttered, "Emily dear," and then just passed out in your chair. When the party ended after midnight, and everyone went to their rooms, you were still there in the hall. So, I asked the night porter to help me drag you to bed. Hey, yes, I definitely didn't remember all this, so I listened with interest to Anna's story about that night, which became the starting point of no return in our story with Emily. The big problem was that no one knew which room you were staying in, and the hotel computers were already disconnected from the network, as they said a program update was carried out at night, or something like that. I didn't really delve into it. The point is that these door key cards are all the same, and it doesn't say what number they are from. In general, the only reasonable solution at that time was to put you in my room. And believe me, this in itself turned out to be a difficult task for such a big guy as you were, and even barely moving your own. There was a pause on the phone, only some slight rustling was heard on the speakers. After a few seconds, Anna spoke again. Sorry, I took a couple of sips of water, but while I was chatting with you, I got a fever and my throat was dry with all these memories, she admitted with a laugh. So, where did I stop there? Oh yes, you finally ended up in my room. Well, I have to admit that at that moment, I was ready to get a little naughty, she said in a rather embarrassed voice. I already said that I accidentally felt your, unit when the receptionist and I were trying to drag you onto the bed. It was just a casual touch, but I immediately realized that you were not only tall but also something of a decent size. Well, you know what I mean, she laughed into the phone again. To my regret, you almost passed out while we were dragging you into the room, and then you immediately collapsed on the bed, muttering something inaudibly. You know, even though I wanted you, and aside, but doing something with an almost insensitive body is, in my opinion, is somehow piggish and generally not in my rules. Be that as it may, I myself was a little drunk that night and very excited. So I stripped naked and lay down next to you, hoping that when you open your eyes and see me, it will surely seduce you. Well, she sighed involuntarily again. It's obvious that this trick of mine never worked because when I woke up in the morning, there was already no trace of you, and no one there saw you until the end of the weekend, no matter how much I asked. So all I can say, Nick, is that your wife must be a very lucky woman. Emily, her eyes widening in shock, covered her mouth with both palms, and the enormous scale of what she had done struck her like thunder. I honestly admit that at that moment, I did not have any sympathy for my ex-wife because the root cause of the entire disaster of our marriage was her own hasty actions and arrogance. The quiet, cold-blooded planning and years of calculated scheming aimed only at getting revenge on me proved that I did not actually know the real Emily. Oh, about that, I responded. Now she's already my ex-wife, and if I then knew what I know now, I think I would have agreed to your tempting offer, I answered Anna, chuckling. She laughed loudly. Well, honey, you're about 7 years too late. If you were hoping to restore a connection now, I'm a very happy married woman with 2 wonderful children. I continue to use the last name more in the office because all my clients know it and are used to it. Well, actually officially am Anna Roberts. I met Robert 8 years ago, and he was the first after you who managed to find a way to my heart. At these words, a wrinkle appeared on Emily's tense forehead. She squeezed the edges of the table with her fingers, and her face was distorted in a pained grimace. With a fixed gaze, she stared at the phone lying in the middle of the table as if the head of a viper was swaying in front of her, ready to pounce. Looking into Emily's face, I was puzzled because I did not understand her reaction. Hey, by the way, it's because of Rob that I thought about you, buddy. Isn't it weird? She said, laughing. Well, the thing is that his older brother Greg is getting married in a couple of weeks, and his fiancée, named Sandy like you, has the last name Roberts. So I wondered if she was your relative, because you are the only person named Roberts among the people I know. Well, now I understand Emily's reaction. I can't say that now among my relatives there is someone named Sandy, I said with a fair amount of irony, looking at Emily. Although, in fact, I remember that the only relative I knew with such a name was still in high school. It was so long ago that I almost forgot about it. Oh, by the way, I remember that she hated being called that so much that she would just get mad and scream like crazy because she thought people would mistake her for a guy. I grinned, looking meaningfully at Emily, who blushed like a boiled crab, looking away and pursing her lips in shame. I really didn't know the real her anymore. Come onorevole. No one would mistake Sandy for a guy now. She's gorgeous. She has amazing children, Megan and Brian, who are now in college. Megan and Greg's daughter, Cindy, are best friends and share a room in Florida. They were both bridesmaids in my wedding, and Brian was Rob's usher. He did a great job preparing the ceremony and entertaining the guests. Yes, a great guy, let me tell you. Over the years, we spent Christmas and Thanksgiving several times with Greg, Sandy, and her children. Rob once told me that they dated and interacted closely on and off for 10 years. Can you imagine that? That short statement told me so much. This proved that Emily's parents certainly knew what was going on between Emily and Greg and always had her back. When my wife was away from home, I would always call her, and they would make all sorts of excuses for her as to why I couldn't talk to her directly. Soon after, Emily would call me back. As I pondered Anna's last words, mechanically assenting to her, suddenly her tone of voice became more serious, and she began to speak a little more quietly. Actually, Nick, to be honest, I don't think they should get married because even if they go for it, their marriage will be doomed in advance. Yes, I was surprised. Why do you think so? What could stop them since they have been together for so long? Emily, as a directly interested person, was even more amazed than I was. Her eyebrows flew up, her mouth parted, and she tensely leaned forward. Lord, Nick, because they are both serial cheaters. I mean, Greg also cheated on his first wife, Linda, with Sandy. I don't know how much less why he did it because Linda, I assure you, was also stunning, although I never actually met her, but I saw her photographs. Anyway, Sandy and I had a candid conversation about this one day, and she told me that her husband and children understand that she has a husband at work and a husband at home. She said that she divided her time between the two of them while her house husband had something similar with the woman he worked with. Can you imagine such a relationship? Yeah, I mumbled, unsuccessfully trying to catch Emily's stubbornly elusive gaze, who was looking anywhere but into my eyes. A ripe beet could envy the deep brightness of the color of her cheeks, neck, and even part of her chest, which was now heaving intermittently. I made sure to make it clear to Rob that I would not hesitate to rip out his belongings if he ever even thought about such a thing. Anna shared with me her uncompromisingness in this matter with threatening confidence. And then she simply and unpretentiously detonated a bomb, dropping a damaging weapon directly on my ex's head, although Anna herself did not even suspect it. Well, Greg still has someone on his side, despite his relationship with Sandy. This is kind of his thing. I think that this dog always had an alternate airfield, she snorted. His current girlfriend's name is Tilly, and he sees her every time he's in Chicago. By the way, from what Rob told me, he specially arranges these business trips for himself so that he can go there every couple of weeks. Watching Emily's reaction, I saw that her complexion changed from bright red to first pale, and then she seemed to even turn a little green. Leaning onto the table, she silently gasped for air, and it seemed that just a little more, and she would vomit right on the spot. Anna continued to animatedly post the latest news from my former best friend. I don't think they would have gotten married at all if his bosses hadn't directly ordered him to make Sandy an honest woman after her real husband sued the company when she divorced him. Can you imagine, Nick? Her house husband had a completely different understanding of this relationship, and he did not put up with all this chaos. They're still normal men, right? Rob told me in confidence that his company had to fork out a significant amount of money to hush up this matter, $300,000, to be precise. Thank you very much, I thought to myself. And in addition, they gave Greg an ultimatum. He must correct the situation so that everything is covered, otherwise they will show him the door. How do you like it? Not the best basis for starting a life together, is it? Continue to bang on the side of your bride, and at the same time, look into the barrel of a double-barreled gun pointed at her face. Emily jumped up, knocked over a chair, and stumbling, rushed into the bathroom. Within a few seconds, I heard her throwing up inside out. I can't blame her for this. After everything she heard today, her cozy little world that she had built so long and carefully turned upside down and was literally flushed down the toilet. Honest, loving, and loyal Greg turned out to be a fake, but that fortunately was no longer my problem. I chatted with Anna for a few more minutes, during which she told me with love and pride in her voice about her children, and also asked me what I was going to do now. I told her that on the recommendation of my former company, I was already applying for a job in a branch of an insurance company whose office was located not far from my mother's house. True, instead of the usual insurance sales, I was offered to investigate suspicious insurance cases. And for me, this was a very interesting area and a new challenge in my career. The money would not be the same as what I earned before, but it would still more than cover my needs. Among other things, my new position came with a personal office and a personal assistant. So in terms of work, I was back on the horse and looking to the future with cautious optimism. Emily returned, exhausted, clutching the walls as I ended my conversation with Anna, exchanging numbers and promising to keep in touch from time to time. After saying goodbye to Anna and pressing the end button, I looked at Emily. My ex-wife was clearly not in the best shape. Her face was wet, pale, and miserable, and most of her expertly applied makeup was either smudged or simply disappeared. Now, Emily looked as if she had aged many years in just 15 minutes. "I'm so sorry, Nick," she sobbed, collapsing powerlessly into a chair and dropping her head on her outstretched arms. This time I really believed her. "Me too. Emily, me too. Listen, I don't have time right now. I need to follow the tracks of one type while they are still fresh, so by morning I should be in Dallas," I answered, glancing briefly at my watch. From here to Dallas, it was about a 6-hour drive if you grill nonstop, but I knew I'd have to stop a couple of times along the way. "All these boxes are yours. They contain all the clothes, photographs, and other junk that you left." I waved my hand towards the packages piled up in the corridor next to the entrance. "I was going to send them to you next week, but since you're here, I can help by throwing them in your car if you want," I suggested to her in an even voice out of the indestructible politeness instilled in me by my parents and remaining indestructible. "Actually, can I ask you a big favor?" She muttered quietly, not even having the courage to look me in the eyes as she spoke. Can I stay here for the night? I don't think I could go back home right now." I thought about it for a few seconds, jingling the set of keys on my finger, and then unhooked a couple and placed them on the table in front of her. "What the hell, why not? Here are your keys and a flag in your hands. Stay. But when you leave, you will have to leave them in the office of the real estate office," I warned Emily. "The new tenants will arrive on Monday, so you have a whole 9 days at your disposal if, of course, you need them. This Sunday, people will come here to help me take unnecessary things to the landfill and clean my apartment. Utilities will continue to provide their services until Monday." Finally, I looked around the room again and mentally slapped myself on the forehead. Walking over to the mantelpiece, I picked up a greeting card that had almost been left there from my caring colleagues from my previous job. In my new place, I will continue to be warmed by the friendly sincerity and warmth of their hearts. Now all that remains is to say the last goodbye to your ex. Okay, it's all over now. Take care, Emily. I really have to go. Goodbye. I hope we never see each other again. As I walked out, I turned around and took one last look at the one I once loved with all my heart. All that remains in my memory is the hunched shoulders of a broken woman sitting at the table, trembling with painful sobs. Thanks for watching this intense tale of betrayal and unexpected revelations. How would you handle discovering the truth after years of deception? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories. See you in the next video.